Once the feed is up. Okay, Tyrone.
So we'll go ahead and call the meeting order at 1:03.
We do need to do roll call. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, everyone. This is the JLMBC special meeting for July 16th. We will now take roll call, starting first with the employee organizations, then with management. Benita Iguelor. Marlene Fonseca.
Here.
Chad Boggio.
Here.
Esteban Lizardo.
Here.
Lisa Palombi.
Here.
Tyrone Spears in for Malika Billups.
Here.
Tony Royster.
Here.
Matthew Rudnick. Paul Girard in for Matthew Sabo.
Present.
Teddy Santos.
So do you have
We
a
have quorum.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 2, public comments.
Hi, members of the public desiring to speak on the agenda's items may inform the JLMBC upon request of public comment. Members who are here in person may fill out a speaker card and bring it up to the front. If you are a member of the public who is on the phone and would like to make a public comment, please press *9 to request to speak. When it is your turn, we will call you in order, and there will be a 2-minute speaking timeline for each public comment.
There's no speakers in the room. Chung, are there any speakers on the call? Oh, it's actually just oh.
There doesn't appear to be any speakers on queue on the Zoom call.
Thank you, Chung. Go ahead and read the speaker card.
All right, so we have a public comment in person. Our name, Kristen.
Mills.
Yes.
That's good. Good.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the JLMBC committee. My name is Kristen Nelms. I'm a director here at Anthem Blue Cross. We have had a longstanding relationship with the city since 2017. And these next 2 minutes, I would like to bring to your attention a few noteworthy items related to the recent RFP process. Starting with rates. Like other providers, our recent rates reflect employee utilization. However, we want to remind the JLMBC of our overall track record. Since 2017, we have provided stable rates that have increased on average less than 6% per year, and in some years have even decreased from current. I would also like to clarify some of the misperceptions about our proposal. Per the terms of the RFP, we submitted a bundled proposal that reflects our current model, and we also added a 6th plan option, which gives your members all the choice that was requested in the RFP, so that we could provide the most affordable proposal with rate caps for the city in years 2 and year 3. Per the terms of the RFP, we were not required to submit an unbundled proposal. Therefore, we did not violate the requirements of the RFP, and we were not disqualified. I would also like to address member disruption. The report before you contains incorrect data regarding the members enrolled in various providers. See page 45 of attachment A. We provided the correct data to your staff and consultants last week, and yesterday, upon reading the report, we discovered the errors, we informed them of their mistake, and requested that they correct it prior to today's meeting. The data reflected in your report will significantly undervalue the amount of disruption across the population in your employees currently covered. I would like to submit, as a matter of public record, the correspondence identifying the errors that was provided to your consultants and staff. And finally, if given the opportunity, we stand ready to enter into negotiations with the city to further improve our benefits offering for the next 3 years. This would present and provide an outcome for the city to successfully meet the objectives of your RFP and also provide your members without any disruption. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments in the room? Chunk, do you see any others that came on the phone while we were talking?
No, I do not.
Vice Chair.
All right, so we're gonna close public comment and we're gonna move to item number 3. Committee report 25 -31, Chaco request for proposal RFP on your 2026 negotiation results.
Hi, committee members. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask Keenan to come to the table. We're going to go through this report, the staff report, as well as attachment A. But I'm going to start off with attachment A. I'd like to start off with getting a brief recap of where we're at, what's happened since the last meeting, a small overview of the findings, and then we'll have Siegel and Keenan go through more detail on the price and the result of the negotiations. And then can recap the rest of the report. And so just to clarify and make sure everything's understood from the very beginning, there are 6 recommendations in this report. There are 3 that are action items, or actually, 5 of them are action items. Starting on page 3 is a recap of where we were at, or what happened through the last meeting.
Chair, can you announce the level? Sure. Sure. Sean and Janeway just joined the meeting on behalf of Janita Equaler. Thank you. So you become the chair. So you are now the Madam Chair. Yes.
Challenges of parking all day long. Oh my goodness.
So on page 3 of the report, and we're slowly getting started, so you have some time to catch up. On page 3 of the report is a recap of where we landed at the May 29th meeting. So the process of the RFP was for the RFP committee to identify placement in packages, or placement of the winning bidders. There are 3 different packages identified: package 1, package 2, package 3. Package 1 included 3 different proposers: UHC, Kaiser, and Blue Shield. The modification of the recommendation was to have them in that order. The report actually had them in a different order, but it was still the same package of those 3 providers. The committee on the May 29th meeting adopted the rest of the recommendations of the report, which meant that the RFP committee could negotiate with those packages in that order. Following the May 29th meeting, the RFP review committee started negotiating with package 1, which is United Healthcare, Kaiser, and Blue Shield. That's where they have been since that May 29th meeting. It was a lot of negotiations, a lot of rounds of negotiations going through and trying to get to the final package and proposal that is identified in this presentation. So I then want to take your eyes towards page 13, 12 and 13. In the May 29th meeting, there was a lot of discussion from this committee, a little bit of uncertainty and uneasiness kind of on moving forward, because we had proposed on May 29th of not giving you the final rates. So you made a selection without knowing the individual per employee rate. And that was a bargaining position so that we would be able to have the best case scenario on getting those rates negotiated. Through that conversation, we discussed that there could be additional options that the committee could consider when we bring this report forward, which is today. Those are outlined, or starting to be outlined, on page 12 and 13. So there are 3 paths forward today. 1 is to adopt the recommendations from the RFP committee and the final rates that are identified in this report, and that's a strongly recommended recommendation. We're going to talk about the finances and where we landed on completely a lot through the next time period. The second option is to identify that the overall final package that is presented from the RFP review committee is not successful, even though the RFP committee says it is. And that there needs to be a different identification of what would be successful in one of the other packages. There is precedent here. Back in 2013, when the city was going through financial crisis back then and layoffs were discussed, our staff at that time had we had gone through a transition of going from which we're going to talk about later on, different plan changes for plan year 2013, and we had Anthem in 2013. For 2014, staff had brought forth the results and said that Anthem was recommended to be continued with the least amount of disruption at that time. But the JLMBC at that time wanted to select Blue Shield because of the cost savings that Blue Shield provided. And so that was the requirement, that was the finding at that time, that cost savings was more important as the overall objective than disruption. And that was a change that the JLMBC made at the time. So something along that line is what what that particular item is discussing, that an authoritative body needs to find a reason that's still in line with the RFP, not changing the objectives, not changing the scope, not changing the requested services, but saying that there is a reason why a separate package or the next place bidders are more favorable than the first place bidder. The last option is always the option on the table for the city to cancel the process. And as talked about before, that is not recommended for multiple reasons. So package one, this past 5.5 weeks of where we've been negotiating and what the final outcome was, is placed into this report, starting on going back to page 4. The end result, the reason why this RFP committee identified this package as the best package totally is because of the increased amount of choice, the size of the network, the extremely low disruption, it's so low that it's hard to quantify, the cost savings to the employee as well as the cost savings to the city. The rates are and there's other factors as well listed on page 5. The rates themselves are listed through page 6 through 8. 6 through 9, excuse me, of the staff report. They're also copied in the attachments that we're going to be going through. The final results result in a cost savings compared to the VAPO for the city. If we went plan to plan, it's a cost savings of $16 million. We had discussed prior through this JLMBC committee that is not the desired outcome. That's what we did 10 years ago. We did a plan to plan replacement. But this committee has made it very clear that the direction, that the action should be to minimize impact to employees and the action to employees. So we plan to do mapping of employees by their primary care physician to the plan where the primary care physician is identified. So someone who is in one type of plan right now, maybe move to a completely different HMO type of plan because that's where their doctor lives or is identified as contracted. That's going to change the overall cost to the city because that plan might be more expensive, but it may not change the cost to the employee. Cost to employee from a premium perspective is a cost savings all around. The plan rates, if you look at 2025 starting on page 7, there is a cost that is the employee cost. So the HMO plan per paycheck is $76 for the full-time employee. On the next page, the California Care Plan has a holistic cost, and the PPO plan has a holistic cost. Each of those is lower in this package for 2026. So everybody who's paying a cost right now, if they're still paying a cost in 2026, it will be lower. Through this PCP plan change, there is also, because we're going to be moving people based on their doctor, there is also a chance that some people are going to have a cost that they pay now or pay in 2026 that they're not paying now. The numbers, though, are greatly different. There's over 1,700 people who are going to have a cost decrease, whereas about 600 to 700 might have a cost increase if they choose to keep that plan. And we're going to talk about that a lot more in detail. So keep that all in mind as we go through further of how this all landed. And to that point of what I just talked about, that's outlined more clearly to the best we could on page 10. Page 10 is the MOU breakdown. It is landscape, so it may or may not show that greatly in here. But this is the employee enrollment. It doesn't show dependents. This is individual employees enrolled by plan type as of right now, as of July of 2025. So to put that still in perspective, the very first category, Anthem Narrow Select Plan. There are 1,066 members in that plan. They all pay $76 a paycheck right now. Any HMO plan that they go into for 2025 will be $10 cheaper. The full network plan, we are arguing a thing later on in this report where we're going to say that it should be covered, or all plans should be covered at the same rate of the subsidy applied. That's a conversation to have on this 3-network model not matching the criteria of the AGCO change. So all 111 of those people would have a cost reduction out of their paycheck. On the PPO plan, the second to lowest bar, the 2,398 employees that are in the employee-only coverage, they never pay a dime. The subsidy fully covers that PPO plan. But the additional members who are on employee plus spouse, employee plus child, employee plus family, which is 575 members, they all will have a $100 per paycheck difference lower in this proposal. The family plan on Vivity, so that's the middle category up there, that 1,038. A portion of those members are going to be eligible to map to the Blue Shield Trio plan, which would be $0 for them. Another portion of them, particularly the ones that go to Cedar, Sinai, and UCLA, if they want to continue going to that under an HMO, would be going under the Signature Value Harmony plan, and they would pay $64 a paycheck, where they pay 0 now, if they wanted to continue that service. Under this structure too, I'm going to pass it over to Siegel and Keenan right next. The PPO for HDHP PPO for Blue Shield has a very low cost when the subsidy is applied. That is 2 pages prior on page 9. The HDHP PPO has the same network as the Blue Shield PPO. But the cost out of pocket is extremely small when the subsidy is applied. So somebody can go to the PPO level plan with their child and children included and not pay anything out of pocket of their paycheck. Only pay $45 versus the $400 for a spouse. But they would pay more when they actually seek services because it's a higher deductible. So later on in the report, we do recommend that anybody who decides to enroll into that, and we have a whole education plan, that they're actively contributing to their health savings account. And to meet the deductible, it would be somewhere, depending if they're on who they have enrolled, it would be, and if they use in-network, out-of-network, it might be a couple $100 a month that they should contribute to their HSA to offset that additional cost, pre-tax. Any questions so far before Keenan and Siegel start to go into much more detail on all this concept? They're eager to hear from you, so go ahead.
Thank you so much, JLMBC members, for having us today. We have before you a report that encompasses the analysis that the RFP Evaluation Committee saw. It includes several parts and pieces, financials, disruption, plan, design, wellness, all the value adds that were sought through the RFP process. And the goal of the RFP process was to create some cost containment, cost stability initiatives, ensuring access and minimal disruption, plan design equity, providing quality care without having benefit decrements, and providing some innovation and favorable terms for the city. The recommendation before you is that the negotiations that happened for package 1 are successful. And we have an executive summary and detailed report that outlines all of that. But to Paul's point, the high level points are that there is a financial savings from the best and final process that the RFP did see. The committee was very thoughtful and diligent in checking boxes to ensure that concerns from this committee were addressed as part of the negotiations, and that the carriers understood the gravity that such a change would mean for the membership. Through that process, negotiations were very favorable. We were able to dialogue with the carriers and achieve a better financial positioning, and talk a little bit about disruption, because we knew that that was very important. Maybe we should start with disruption so we can kind of go over that. Jillian, do you want to kind of kick us off there?
Yeah, sure.
And if you could just say the page number you're on.
That'd be very
Yeah,
helpful
it's
for all of us following at home.
Are we on the report or the attachment?
Within the Keenan report, it starts, kind of at the bottom of page 40 and then, sort of the meat of it is on 41.
Which one is?
That would be 63, I believe. And I will,
It starts with the word construction about halfway down the back.
Yeah.
That way they.
So as Megan mentioned, we did want to make sure that we address some of the concerns that we had heard from the JLMBC at the 529 meeting, and one of those was access to the same providers that are currently being utilized today. So based on the data that Anthem had provided to us during the data gathering phase at the very beginning of this year, we did what's called a disruption analysis, which is a provider to provider match of those being utilized within the current networks to see if they are in network participating with the proposed replacement networks. In doing that, we saw very strong matches for both the from a current to proposed replacement plan, very strong matches for both the full HMO and the PPO networks. And we saw between 50 and 60% matches for the narrow and the Blue Shield Trio networks when comparing them to the current narrow network plans that they would be replacing. So that's Vivity and the Select network. We also then took it a step further and looked at both of the existing narrow network plans in sort of a holistic way, saying, okay, maybe somebody that's in a narrow network today, maybe their provider isn't in Harmony, but they could be in Trio. So when we looked at it in more of, and vice versa. So when we looked at it in more of a holistic way, we saw a much stronger provider match across the narrow networks that we have today to the proposed replacement networks of around 82%. And the three medical groups there that were falling out of network in both of the proposed narrow networks was Cedars, UCLA, and Regal Medical Group, all of which are in network with the proposed full network replacement plan, which is United Healthcare Signature Value HMO. So all in all, very good provider match. When we look at this from a holistic perspective, there shouldn't be any major gaps between who's accessing which providers today and what's available within all the proposed networks. We did also take it a step further, knowing that there's specific provider locations that are more valuable than others. For example, you have a lot of foot traffic that goes to a Prospect Health Group location in Culver City, for example. So we wanted to look at specific provider locations as well, knowing and look at their PAR status within the proposed network. So there's some supplemental reports in there that show the top 25 providers. You'll see some kind of repeats of medical groups in there. That's because there's multiple locations within a certain geographic area. But in general, that can give some additional context to any potential concerns about the provider groups that are currently utilized today being available in any of the proposed networks. So through what we saw in the disruption analysis and based on some additional provider or PCP election reports that were provided by Anthem, we used this information to develop migration assumptions to incorporate into the projected financial costs. And those will tell us where we're expecting people to go based on the provider matching that we saw in the data that was provided to us. So those are all factored into the cost projections that you see within the report. But overall, when we look at current networks to proposed networks from a holistic perspective, there's a very strong provider match and there shouldn't be much disruption from the providers currently used today to those that would be available to them under the proposed scenario.
I'm gonna pause there for any further comments of us.
That's just a quick observation on page 43 of the report, whatever the PDF page number is, 66. As Jillian pointed out, we're looking at which medical groups saw the most foot traffic, so it's based on utilization. There are numerous other members that are aligned with medical groups, don't receive any care throughout the year. Just, it's not necessary, they're not seeking it. But based on where the foot traffic is, it gives us an idea kind of what's going on. I think interesting observation from our perspective was, as an example, Prospect Health Source Medical Group. was not part of Anthem's Vivity product, but it is associated with Blue Shield's Trio product, which means we're providing access to medical clinic that members are utilizing heavily, but the city is getting it at a better price point. So there are numerous examples between Prospect and a couple of the Optum Care networks where we have the same dynamic going on. So again, as we talk about kind of winners and losers, it cuts across the spectrum. But this is an example of where we're leveraging and finding some potential savings for the city in aggregate, and also providing members access to the same providers they're seeing today.
We'll pause for any questions. In terms of the disruption itself, one of the things that the RFP did and requested was a disruption management plan. Part of that was we wanted to ensure if there's process did result in a change in carrier, that the member experience was as best as it possibly could be, and that the carriers would step up and help with that. So the disruption management plan requested a variety of things. It requested continuity of care. It requested grandfathering of prescriptions, drugs, and the tiering. It requested recruitment plan, performance guarantee, and a whole variety of other things that are within the scope of managing that process. To that end, we wanted to make sure that members had the best possible experience. The mapping process and timeline plan notwithstanding, these processes do have impact to some members. And so we wanted to put these things in place to ensure that even those that may be disrupted, however small, had a path to getting the care that they needed. So that was the point and purpose of the disruption management plan. In whole, UHC agreed to the disruption management plan. In terms of Blue Shield, they had some caveats for their disruption management plan. And some of that was, like, oh, see you.
I'm so sorry, that's embarrassing.
No.
Sorry.
Some of that was discussed and talked about during the negotiations process. For example, Blue Shield did not agree to grandfather their formulary, and through our pharmacy analysis, we saw that Blue Shield members would actually be more advantaged by using their pharmacy care reimagined program. So we understood why they would not agree, because members would actually benefit from the programs that they have in place today. So we have kind of outlined what that looks like. In terms of the provider recruitment plan, this was a point of discussion, much discussion with Blue Shield in particular. They did not agree to the provider recruitment plan. However, we did learn that they had, again, a reason that they could not agree to it, and that is because their recruitment process for Trio in particular, it being an ACO, has a much higher standard than a typical HMO plan, given the fact that it is an ACO. So they gave us some examples and kind of talked through that with us, but we did want to call that out. They did agree to all the other components of the disruption management plan that are in line with DMHC rules regarding continuity of care and what have you. The other item that was very important to the RFP evaluation committee was getting members to their providers. Ultimately, I think that's what drives this process, is ensuring that people can retain the relationship that they have with their current providers today. It's super important, especially those who are going through care and treatment. And so another request that we had was the ability for the city to retroactively enroll members into their PCP of choice during the open enrollment process, should they have missed the boat, not been mapped, because we've talked a lot about, trying to guide people to making selections during open enrollment. Not everybody does all the time. So there could be folks that need the concession of being able to retroactively enroll with their PCP and get to where they need to be. So they did agree, both Blue Shield and United Healthcare did agree to that. Obviously, Kaiser, there is no disruption, so that was not a very big component for them in particular. In terms of the disruption management plan itself, it is obviously most important for those new carriers that would be coming in versus incumbent carriers. But overall, the committee was gratified by the things that the carriers did put forth in negotiations. Additionally, as part of this, outside of disruption itself, support resources, a change of this magnitude is going to require education. It's going to require a lot of handholding and helping folks get to the right place. And so we did also ask about dedicated carrier transition teams, additional services during open enrollment, on-site support, and we did get some additional concessions and agreements and commitments on those fronts as well. As of today, the carriers are ready with a LA well-specific microsite should it need to be needed for members, even as early as starting tomorrow, but they do need to confirm all of our plans to make those live and final. So they recognize their role that they play as part of this process and have already made some commitments. Steve, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I think the area we'd like to focus in on is the mapping process. I think historically members look at their health coverage being through, in this case, Anthem or Kaiser. But in reality, their relationships with the provider and Anthem, Cigna, UHC, whoever contracts with them to make that arrangement, and pay out that arrangement or consolidate payments. So in the end, what we're trying to do is to help members kind of see that line of sight to who is their provider relationship, how do we get to that point. So we did working with TELUS Health, which is a benefits administration firm that's going to help conduct open enrollment. Worked with Anthem to get a listing of HMO members to identify which physicians are they specifically aligned with. What we're using is the national provider identification number, which exists for every provider. So we get a one-to-one mapping that is generally going to be a consistent number used, whether it's Anthem, UHC, or Blue Shield, to kind of say one-to-one, where should I be going to? So in basically 75% of the cases, Anthem, through the relationships with the current medical groups, was able to identify a number specific to a physician. So we got alignment, whether it's an employee, spouse, or child. 25% of those members don't have a specific alignment to a physician, but it's based on the medical group's practice, which does not assign direct relationships. So that's an area that we'll work on, and we'll want to kind of work with members throughout the enrollment process to remain educated about, as of pick a date, pick September 1st, transfer the data, make it go live, and going, as of September 1st, you are aligned with this physician. Changes could occur from September through the end of the year. But at least at that point in time, we're saying, this is who you identified with, and this is the plan that we can map you to that ensures that relationship continues. So in some cases, it could be mapped to the Blue Shield Trio program. In some cases, it might be the United Healthcare Signature Value Full Network to align those with UCLA or Cedars. So that mapping and that process is in place. The member during open enrollment will have the option to make changes. We're not telling them that's your plan, you have to take it, but it's a starting point for them to kind of make that analysis as opposed to having to start fresh and going, I don't know where to begin. We're beginning with, this is what your current relationship is. Do you want to make changes? Let's discuss and talk about it. I know Paul and the staff have other kind of input with regard to kind of open enrollment and that education process, but the mapping process is underway. We're working with TELUS Health to kind of create that linkage. And then based on this group's decisions, we'll be able to outreach with both Blue Shield, United Healthcare to begin kind of informing that process and kind of make it very tangible.
Did you say September 1st was going to be the date?
It was an arbitrary date. What would that kind of stop date would be? It could be in August. It could be at some point in time that will be done, but that's the work that's going on. But I'm just using it as an example.
We did provide a timeline and milestones as part of an implementation overview. I know that was a question and a point that was important to the community to kind of understand what the timing would look like overall for a transition like this. And so we did get from the carriers their input on timelines and asked them for their look at that, and then kind of worked into the city's process and provided an overall timeline of what this could look like. As Steve mentioned, employee education is going to be very important in this process. And so the RFP committee also discussed that at length about the robustness of what education could look like and support. And we're recommending a multi-channel communication plan, as the city has done in years past, on-site support, decision support tools, and then also to, a friendly hand from our labor partners, and also to working with departments and department heads to kind of get the message out. As Steve mentioned, the idea is that provider relationships are important to the employees of the city of Los Angeles. We've heard that. And so it is the goal of this process to ensure that is as seamless as possible. And I think Stevie touched on the role that TELUS is going to help, I think, with that in terms of them. Follow on to that, there are mechanisms for the city to continue to ensure a good experience for members. That it includes things like post-open enrollment audits, just to make sure that folks landed where they meant to land in terms of their provider. An appeal and correction period, which is something that's in place today that the city will obviously leverage as well. And then we also have the carriers commit to a post-enrollment survey at some point after the open enrollment process to develop it so that your members can provide feedback on what the process looked like. And that would come back to this committee for review as well. Past that, ongoing monitoring and issue resolution, transition of care issues can sometimes take a little bit of time. So the city would be meeting with the carriers on a regular basis to identify those folks and help facilitate resolution for that. Steve also mentioned data transfer as part of the PCP. That's not the only item of transfer that will be had. We would expect to see some data transfer in terms of prior authorizations in process, both for care and for formularies that would switch hands in order to make sure, again, a smooth transition. So there's a lot that happens between now and the beginning of a plan year, but all of that is coordinated to ensure the best possible member experience. Pause again, yes.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Melissa has a question. In your presentation, you had mentioned that the proposed new carriers were open to migration post open enrollment period for to correct errors or mistakes or oversights or what have you. Can you show me where in the timeline that period?
Yeah, that would be the extended correction period.
Okay, so that's what that means. Okay.
That's the correction period on the city side, but the carriers themselves, and it's a little bit earlier, have agreed to, it's on page 47, I don't know which the PDF page number is, 47 of the report, they agreed to a 45-day retroactive PCP assignment to help members who, even beyond that first 30 days, to get back to their providers.
And looking at the timeline, it looks like a lot's got to happen between now and October 1st, including a bunch of data transfer. We know, that one of, I don't know, I can call it hiccups that the new federal system is thrust upon all of us. Is there an anticipation that that's going to be a problem given, the nature of things here?
I think for the CP side of things, it's actually going to be in TELUS system and not payroll. From the provider side, that's actually something that doesn't touch your system. It would be transferred between Anthem and the carriers directly. In terms of the timing of that, to make sure we've captured the latest and greatest prior authorizations and data, we would want to have that transfer happen as close to the plan year as possible. Because if we request it too soon, we'll miss people who have a subsequent,
yeah,
and vice versa.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. In terms of value adds and additional benefits, the city requested things like wellness dollars, on-site member advocates. The carriers have all agreed to kind of an on par with what today's current process is. Wellness in particular is an area that the RFP committee saw a lot of value given some of the resources that United Healthcare and Blue Shield will bring to the table in terms of demonstrated member behavior changes. So they were very intrigued by the innovation that they saw there. So that was also a good look towards what the future could hold in terms of wellness and in the ROI that we would be able to see from that program. And then in terms of the 3-carrier model itself, I know there was a lot of concern at the last meeting that if it would work or not. And so we wanted to address that as part of this report as well, and provided some case studies and examples of where we saw some of that be successful out here in the industry, and then specifically for California public agencies. On page, there's a section in the report that speaks specifically to that. Let me go back here, both from an industry perspective and then from a case study perspective. And what we're looking for and the goal is, and that starts on page 16, is a much flatter trajectory in terms of your expected costs and increases on a year-over-year basis. There's a chart in here and it is on page, sorry, it is here, page 14. That shows the city's historical increases over a period of time, and we do have this very much this up and down, not a very straight line in some cases for the plans, and our goal is to kind of get to a much flatter trajectory that provides a benefit for the city in terms of total overall cost and members. It can be disruptive to members in particular when their costs go up and down from a year-to-year basis. They never quite know what to expect. And so we definitely want to get to a much better member experience overall. So there is some data in there for your review. Happy to answer any questions that you might have in terms of the concept. And Steve, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to provide.
Two complementary thoughts. One, in terms of using multiple providers, so in this case, Blue Shield and United Healthcare. By bringing them together, we're finding that there's some complementary benefits to it. For instance, trying to cover geographies that weren't historically accessible to members at kind of the lowest price point. So by combining those two, we're able to touch, as an example, Inland Empire much better than we were historically. So that is a plus. Oftentimes, though, there may be overlap between Blue Shield and UHC healthcare providers. They're contracted with the same providers. They might be in the same network or plan. What that does do is that offers the member the opportunity to say, which kind of platform or resources do I prefer better? Do I prefer Blue Shield versus UHC? So it's a different dynamic where the member has actually a little bit more choice to say, I'm still going to go to this provider. But what are the features that Blue Shield or UHC brings to the table that might be differentiating for me to kind of make that difference? As an example, maybe the pharmacy formulary might be different. Someone may say, I find the Blue Shield model attractive, it's new, it's innovative, and it may save me money. For others, maybe I'm a little bit more traditional, and I may prefer the UHC formulary in lieu of that. So they give some members choice they probably wouldn't have had before because it was either kind of one or nothing. The other aspect we talked about kind of new features would be the introduction of the health savings account qualified PPO plan. And I will tell you, I don't expect a lot of people to kind of participate in that program on its face because it looks like a lot of risk. However, when you look at that, particularly for families who were enrolled in that probably for a lot of reasons that were very unique to them, students out living outside the state, et cetera. So it's like they had to be in that plan and they're paying a lot of money for it. Well, based on the current design of the high-level health plan, I would focus on two elements in terms of trying to figure out what the total cost is. What's the payroll deduction? And then what's the maximum out of pocket? How much do they have to pay in terms of services to have the plan pay for 100% for the rest of the year? When you combine those two items together, compare them to what the cost would be going from what it is today, 2025 for traditional PPO to the health savings account, there's a tremendous financial windfall for that individual to actually make investments in that health savings account and still cover their out-of-pocket expense. So they have a unique opportunity to kind of put that down payment on that account and kind of build into it, but it's not for everybody. But as Keenan team has mentioned, employees do ask for it, particularly if you're bringing in mid-career employees. They either have or have had health savings account plans. They may have health savings accounts kind of sitting somewhere they would like to use or work with. So again, it's just kind of another opportunity or feature. So it's not the end all or be all, but that would also be, I think, part of the education process, trying to make sure people have the opportunity to review it, understand it, and make the best decision for that.
You mentioned formularies. Are members going to have access to the formularies during the open enrollment period to make that kind of?
Yes, they should. Yes.
Because I have a hard time finding a formulary now as a paying member. How would a prospective customer get a hold of that?
They would have access to staff to help. Blue Shield can help get them to the right formulary or UHC, whichever plan it is that they're looking at, and do a comparison. There's going to be lots of education on that point, because those are the two main things that we see during a transition of this nature is my doctor in network and are my drugs covered? And so those would be the 2 points that we would do a lot of education on during that open enrollment period to help members, even in advance of open enrollment, if I'm not mistaken. The timeline is having some materials available ahead of time so folks can start to assess that. So yes, those will be available.
Earlier, you spoke about disruption for the members that currently are enrolled with Vivity. And it mentioned, I think a couple hospitals in their group, UCLA being one and I think Cedars being the other. What about the other hospitals? What does that look like? I know that they're big draws and people are, wanting to enroll there, but, and then secondarily, what is the cost increase look for them if for them to end up in the same, hospital network with another alternative that we are proposing?
I think Jillian's going to pull that up, but in terms of cost increase from an employee cost perspective, somebody who's in Vivity today who pays nothing, if they wanted to go to Cedars or UCLA, they have the option to go to the full network, which when we did the subsidy, and we do still need to talk about the subsidy conversation, it looks like it's an out-of-pocket cost of $64 and some change per pay period to maintain that primary care physician facility.
And that's based on member plus family or?
Yeah, that's a family level only. The below family levels are all free.
Okay, so it's just that group that would be, have
Exactly,
a new out-of-pocket.
correct.
Correct, if the other, if item C is adopted, the C and D are adopted.
So pre-tax premise on the change that you described in your document. And $64, $64 pre-tax.
Well, yeah, help is.
And,
Correct.
and then premised also on adopting your recommendation to reconfigure our current narrow
Correct,
full networks.
that is correct.
And just to clarify, we're talking about $64 monthly, because it's made, let's, no, that's 128,
28 pre-tax,
Correct.
$100 in real money.
well, 101 third, or 30.
I mean, 70%.
And just regarding your question about the provider or the medical groups outside of UCLA and Cedars. So UCLA and Cedars make up about 38% of the membership currently within Vivity. Every other provider group utilized, we went down to 19 members utilizing them, is either in network with Blue Shield Trio or UHC. In addition to the Signature Value Full Network, so they would have at least two options of where to enroll.
HMO options.
HMO
They also would
option.
have the PBO options available.
And then related, if I could, unless somebody has something they want to run there, I want to dominate the conversation.
Real quick before I am getting comment, anybody, if you could still speak into the mic, even though we do have new technology, it's still using the speakers that are in the ceiling.
No, I thought it was that. Looking at the graph, I understand that part of the goal was to take out the volatility and the premium increases that we see indicated on your chart, with maybe one exception. It looks a lot more standard. But what I didn't understand from the proposal is how does that achieve that with this three provider option that we're considering?
Right, so right now you currently have Kaiser and Anthem. Kaiser and Anthem's models are very different from each other, so they essentially have no check or balance. Introducing a third carrier will provide a check and balance for both Kaiser and the other non-Kaiser plans, in that everybody's gonna want to put their best foot forward in terms of pricing, so that way they can retain membership. And then also in terms of services. Additionally, having that third carrier will spread the risk of your population over 3 carriers instead of 2 at present time, which will help stabilize some of your costs on a year-over-year basis. Is there anything you want to add to that, Steve?
Specific to Vivity, Vivity represents maybe less than 10% of total enrollment. When it was started, I think it was positioned from a price standpoint equal to or very competitive with Kaiser, and it still is. But it doesn't have a geographic footprint to be accessible to the majority of employees. So there are some limitations. So the idea of introducing kind of 2 carriers kind of within that side of the equation. So UHC and Blue Shield, they are competing with each other for membership, but have a geographic spread to make that possible. But there's also additional dynamic is that they can also compete directly with Kaiser financially and do it through a different model to kind of create a dynamic. It's not just one versus the other, but it's kind of a 3-way competition, which is if you want membership, then how do we ensure that you're delivering a system that captures those efficiencies and then delivers it to the city?
So in the lines that represent Anthem's products on this chart, in addition to them flattening out, you're anticipating that should we do this, the Kaiser line would actually flatten out. Thank you.
Um, going back to the mapping. And if there's, you say there may be two carriers that offer the same PCP. What carrier, how are you gonna determine what carrier they go in then?
That's a good
Robert,
question.
the starting point would be the lowest price point. If I can guarantee you access to the provider and medical group you see today, we have two competing options to do exactly that. And we could go with the lowest one, and the member still has the option at open enrollment to say, that's not what I wanted, I want carrier B instead, because they offer different things that I find attractive.
Are they gonna be told both carrier A and B or you've just been placed in here?
It's a suggested assignment, but it's open enrollment, and the open enrollment process will encourage the members to make a choice.
It would be up to them though to go in and research and see that their PCP is also available through the other network.
I get it. Our intention is to make sure employees understand everything. So what Steve was talking about is we're gonna make a personalized communication to the employees. That's the plan. And say, as of this point in time, we see that you have these dependents covered, and these are all the primary care positions that you're in. This is the plan that we've identified that we're mapping to, because they're all considered, or they're all included. But these are your options. This is how you find out more. This is what you can do. So that's the intention, is that we make it very clear and very obvious to the 7,000 employees that are gonna have this situation in them in the HMO. But it still is gonna be on them to read it.
Okay.
And then actually take advantage of their options. And to the point previous, right, we have the double correction window as well.
Again, the plan designs are identical, the HMO plan designs, there is no variance between them in terms of copay levels, out-of-pocket maximum. It's guaranteed. It's like hard to make a bad choice, but again, they still have the option. So we're not trying to tell somebody that's what you're getting. It's a case of, this is your starting point. Do you want to make a change?
I have a follow-up question on that, but you brought up another question. If the family all has different PCPs, or, you know, parents, mom has one different than the kid, but they're not in the same network, is that, they gotta, obviously.
Well, we see a lot of color. It's very colorful, right? On how people have chosen their situations. So we already see that. The interesting thing about the way that this is set up, the UHC signature value has the majority of doctors included into it. So if that situation occurs and they do not have full mapping, so maybe 1 out of the 3 individuals is on the Trio plan and then 2 out of the 3 on the Harmony plan. From what we've seen so far, all 3 of them are on that signature value. So it is a cost to the city in that mapping scenario, because we're gonna put them into a larger network. But I believe that's the better experience and the experience that this committee wants, so that we aren't having those dependents lose access to their PCP if the employee doesn't take action.
Okay. Going back to Steve, on, oh god, I'm losing my train of thought now. Going back to, we were talking about the, remind me, I'm sorry.
I lost my train of thought.
I know, go back.
I want it back and forth. Taking one at a time.
Okay, I know. So the correction period, yeah, so, you know, there's this correction period, they both offer the same PCP. Whose job is it to be like the neutral? Because obviously Blue Shield's not gonna say what offerings UHC has that they don't, and vice versa, UHC is not gonna do that.
The differentials between UHC and Blue Shield, which I'm describing, are kind of nuanced. They're not significant differences, but it's like.
But you talked about formularies and.
We talk about formulary, but key differences in telehealth. Do I like that platform better? Do they have a medical record keeping
Okay, so
platform
that's.
that I would be,
what
those types of things, but the core benefits and structure of the plans are gonna be identical across, which has always kind of been a consistent theme for the city, which is pick your provider, but we're trying to keep the designs consistent. So that just eliminates some of that complexity. You're going, I didn't know I'd get dinged on that specific benefit. It's like, tried to keep them even, or system across the board. So we're still striving for that. That's the case. Now it's just a matter of, can we map you to a physician? And if it works, great, we move on. if there's questions, this can be generated by the employee who goes, wait a minute. To use your example, I have a dependent child that uses this medical group instead of the one the rest of the family uses. Can we get that done? And as Megan described a few moments ago, even if we get into post-open enrollment and we still identify that has not been corrected, we've got agreement to help make those corrections. So we get through that process, because the intent is not to put someone where they don't want to be. We're just trying to kind of get ahead of the curve and do it as proactively as possible, so we can minimize some of that activity after the fact.
I just want to point out that agreement and commitment from the carriers to retroactively enroll it's fairly unusual, given that HMOs are capitated. But they're committing to that. Members always have the option, even outside of that window, to update their PCP going forward. This just gives them the opportunity to go, like if they went and were seen and something happened and they said, oh, you were not, you've been auto assigned for whatever reason, they can have that retroactively put back to 1/1 with their PCP and have a better experience.
If I might, we just use the term that, I'm not really alarming or anything, but I want to understand the difference. Is the mapping going to result in auto assignment or a recommendation to the plan participant during open enrollment to make a choice, which are two different things from my perspective?
Yeah, it is a recommendation during open enrollment. Once open enrollment closes, and I'm looking at policies to make sure it's
The 31st October.
October 31st. That's what will be in the system, and that information is what will be transferred to Blue Shield. Now, if somebody goes into the system, and we've seen this, and they say, oh, I want to go see Dr. Jensen, and they say, here's his PCP number, and they missed a 0 or something, it's not going to be recognized, and that could result in some sort of auto assignment. But we've discussed also too doing an audit of PCPs, just numbers, just to make sure that that doesn't happen, kind of helping members who had the best of intentions of getting to that Dr. Jansen, but just keyed in a different number.
So let me ask one more time, just because the way I understand it, it works this way, but during open enrollment, a member will be auto assigned based on their PCP to the most appropriate or choice, right?
Right.
To result in the least disruption.
Really mapped.
But during that time period, they would have a chance to change that.
Correct.
And after.
And after.
Correct.
Even if it results in them paying like individually to the full.
Signature value.
Yes, even then, okay. My last question, for now anyway, on the, only because you covered this topic already, the HCHP. You might auto enroll people in that, correct? You won't be auto enrolling anybody in it. Okay.
I have a
Never
follow-up
mind.
question. So the nuance of the differences in the carriers, who's, like she said, Blue Shield's not gonna tell you these are the things that we provide versus what someone else provides. How are we gonna have a way when we're doing our education program to explain to people, this one has telehealth, or this one has a wellness program, or something like that, so that they can, I get it, they're primarily the same, but there are nuances, and how's the person making the choice gonna know what those nuances?
Yeah, I was gonna say there's gonna be information that'll be on the microsite, just as we have microsites today for carriers, but also during open enrollment. The fairs, on-site fairs, and access to member advocates.
We are planning a very extensive education campaign, but the overall, if I think I'm understanding the question correctly, it is TELUS and City with help from consultants making sure that the mapping is happening. UHC and Blue Shield are not. It is us as well that are making sure that the education is correctly provided and accurately provided. So we're planning a very extensive options. So, and across the board, which we're going to talk about a little bit at the last item. And then our intention is to bring drafts of what those materials look like at the next meeting in August.
Isn't that information, wouldn't that be the type of information you would give to people and they can inform the city during open enrollment?
Yeah, this is enhanced that, yes. Yeah, so we're talking about a lot of targeted stuff as well. So that 7,000 members that we know are going to have a map, they're going to have a change in plan because the Anthem HMOs are not available. They're going to get special communication on top of the general communication that is happening.
I would also like to make an observation. The 7,000, I think, are the most important people in this discussion because they will be immediately affected regardless of whether they want to. Don't forget about the 20,000. And in this sense.
Right.
If we're introducing a third carrier, we're introducing HDHP, which has incredible benefits potentially. As a lifelong Kaiser member, I don't know what life is like outside of Kaiser. And it's scary. And if you're going to force people to make an affirmative decision, that means people are going to have to go in and do just that. But if you're also in the decisions we've made and the decisions we're contemplating, things we've been talking about, we are talking about having people, we're talking about a reset. We're talking about having people start to take a more active choice and be informed and be educated. It would be nice, not the micro level. You don't have to tailor make, oh, you can go to Foothill or Hollywood, and these are the carriers in between, but at a fair and a general way. Give a sense to the people who aren't directly infected, but you may want to have consider other options. What does it mean if I go to the HDHP, if I go to Blue Shield? How do I select a doctor? I don't know. I was born at Kaiser. And I won't divulge my true feelings about Kaiser, but this conversation should give you an indication about where I'm leaning. Thank you.
Back to the HDHP, just a quick question. Did somebody else have a question?
I do.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You want to go?
Well, in the written material, we saw a little bit of trepidation about if a dependent has a different medical group than the primary account holder. But you just said something different, saying that you plan on mapping out every person in the family, so.
Correct. And well, just to further go down that the rabbit hole, for lack of a better analogy, there's a lot of moving pieces and everything, right? So when we do this mapping, it is a moment in time. After that moment in time, a dependent, because as was mentioned, you can change your PCP every 30 days. So a dependent could go and make a change. That is not captured in what we did. So it would be important for the employees and their dependents to understand that why there would be a difference between what we did in October versus what they might see, and for them to take action to correct it so that it matches with what their objective is. There's also, we have a lot of life events that happen in this period between September and December. That is not part of the scenario. So there's still moving pieces. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be perfect, but we're making sure we're going to do the best possible way to map and make sure it's clear to employees on what happened and what their actions need to be.
Just to even complicate it more. So I just got a letter from Anthem saying that my provider group isn't in contract with them anymore, and as of September 1st, I'll be placed in a different medical group and get a new card. And I'm like, okay, so I'm pretty sure my mapping data is not going to be correct, because.
So in those happen on a somewhat routine basis, kind of in that situation with Anthem. So should that contract not follow through, you would be auto-assigned to the next closest provider within that geographic area. That's kind of how that happens. You get a notice of it and everything else. And then to your point, right, it's timing. It's when do we pull that data? Does it include your new one? Does it include your old one? That all needs to be spoken to.
The idea being that the data should be pulled as close as possible to open enrollment to capture updates like that. But folks who go in all have the option to key in or choose a different provider. Say you got a notice like that, you didn't like that provider and you wanted to select someone else. You'd want to also do that during open enrollment. So that's what's captured on the file that goes on to Blue Shield or UHC for your PCP designation. Past that, safety net is you have that 45-day window to retroactively change your PCP to what you intended it to be. And then past that, you can do it on a prospective basis.
And the 45-day period is November 1st on, or is it January 1st on?
It's January 1st on.
Just to clarify point two, the 30-day period that's in the report is the advertised. So we were advertising to employees, you have a 30-day window to make a correction in January, which we've never done.
So have we done this type of displacement before? I think in the past, have we had any destruction at this level or single level?
So from what I can remember and research in the past, when we've done provider changes, we have not done it like this before. This is a first.
Meaning mapping?
Correct. So when we've done provider changes in the past, it has been plan to plan. So the exact model of plan replacement was what people got. And then if you wanted to make sure your primary care physician was there, it was on the employee to do that action and to make that switch. This is different.
This is going one step further.
Say that again?
This is going one step further.
Correct.
So taking one less chore off of the employee to remain as whole as possible.
So the primary mapping, I mean, when you do the mapping, the first thing you're considering is the primary care physician. If it goes from, if you're an Anthem person and Anthem's not with us, you have to go to one of the other two, you're gonna map them to their primary care physician first. Have you considered, or maybe it's, I don't know, I'm picturing like some people that are less tied to their primary care physician as much as they're concerned about their prescriptions being the same. I even the coverage of them, as opposed to, you know, it might cost $10, $20, $30 more, but am I still gonna be able to get my prescription? Is that part of the mapping at all, or you're just kind of assuming that if you keep with a primary care physician under the new plan, the prescription should stay the same because of this other analysis that you've done that says that there's just a small percentage of people that haven't changed their prescription disruption?
So the mapping would take into account the PCP and then find the lowest cost option or whatever that might be for that provider is in network. If that happens to be Blue Shield, we saw that there was a favorable financial impact in terms of formulary. With UHC, they have grandfathered the formulary as part of their commitment. And then from there, we are obviously transferring that data, right, so that members are not disrupted in terms of their prior authorization. So the goal is to mitigate exactly that and get them to the best financial spot possible in terms of their provider and their family.
I think that situation lends itself to the education process, which is how do Blue Shield and UAC differentiate themselves? Publishing the formulary should be a first step. You know, plan design, formulary, and then all the other ancillary things so that the member can say, okay, if you add me to Blue Shield because it's my primary care physician, but my drug mix doesn't appear to be covered under that formulary, I probably want to be on the alternative. So it's like that's some of the movement we'd expect during open enrollment. So again, we're trying to kind of take up as much of that decision-making process as possible, like preemptive. But there are going to be situations where someone's going to have to sit down and look at that. And I think that's why staff's done a really good job of kind of expanding the availability of these meetings so that we can have people talking to them one-on-one, because these aren't conversations somebody's gonna be able to go, I got it figured out. It's like you're gonna want to talk to somebody.
And if I remember my open enrollment package correctly, which has been a year or thereabouts, you see what you have today. And then it says you can choose these things. So to Patty's point, if I get assigned, I don't have an ECP that is compatible or is equal, then I can actually go and I can say, oh, look, today I spend $10 on generics, $20 on fancies. These plans cover this. I've been assigned to the 1530. I want to go to the other 1020. So you'll have that information.
And then just want to wrap back around to the point that you made earlier about the high deductible health plan and being a Kaiser member, lifetime Kaiser member, then maybe wanted to try out something new. One of the other things that the RFP evaluation committee talked about at great length was ensuring that folks who actually enroll in the high deductible health plan know what they're getting into and having a touch point with those folks even beyond open enrollment, and just having that conversation if they were to go in on their own and enroll during open enrollment, that follow-up on the back end just to say, hey, you have enrolled in a high deductible health plan. Here's what that means in terms of your costs. You have you have the option to contribute to an HSA to mitigate those and kind of walk down that path. And then they would have the opportunity during open enrollment and the correction period to say, oh, I didn't know that that's what that meant. Let me make a further change. So I did want to just that's one thing that the committee felt was very important, is that further going above and beyond one step for those that enroll in that high deductible health plan.
With no auto deductions for the first year only?
Not auto deduction, are you talking about auto enrollment? There is
No auto deduction for the HSA contribution?
correct, and it does not presume or enroll anybody into an HSA contribution. You can enroll into the high deductible health.
But can they auto deduct from their paycheck or
I believe
that was
The-
said somewhere in the report?
The way that we're setting up this inaugural, we're not, we're not gonna be doing the administration of the HSA. It's gonna be proposed to be done through the medical provider.
And they capture the tax savings at the end of the year or?
Yes, I believe that's,
They'll get a form?
They make contributions throughout the year, they can make it at the beginning or the end. It's their choice, but then they would receive the tax document from the HSA administrator.
they would use that to file their taxes.
Okay.
I had the same question. I wasn't, that tripped me up. Two things in that paragraph. So how does that work exactly? Right now I have an HSA.
Right.
Comes out of my paycheck every.
right,
Okay, so
the FSA one. So the FSA, we're administering the contract, so we're handling the payroll deduction concept through payroll. And then that gets reported to whatever extent on W-2. In this concept, the employee would be directly, because we don't know what the enrollment's gonna be, we don't know what the interest is gonna be or anything else, it's an inaugural step. The employee would enroll directly or make contributions directly to their account through their medical provider. So there'd be once the enrollment is complete on the medical provider side, there'd be an account established for them in the subcontractor, which is currently identified as Health Equity. And then they would make contributions directly, they make deposits into that account outside of the payroll system.
So affirmatively, every two weeks, I would have to go in and make that.
With the whatever
Once a month or?
Or
whatever your frequency is, we strongly recommend monthly, the correct. If this is successful, if there's interest enough, then in year 2, we can transfer over administration to the city, and then it could be payroll deduction.
Okay, the only other question I had, which gives me significant discomfort, but probably you can overcome this, is it is assumed that they would receive separate tax documents?
Well, we're
I
not
think
administering it, so that's why it says.
Can we get an answer to that before we engage in that's I don't think anybody should operate or make decisions based on assumptions.
We'll get it in writing from the carriers for you, but I can tell you every carrier that has this kind of issues those tax documents.
Okay. I think that would give people more comfort in
And it
being able
actually,
to make it.
yeah, and it actually come from their partner Health Equity, and which you all are familiar with Health Equity if you have them in the past. So.
I have one last thing based on what Petty asked about the prescriptions. Are there different criteria or medical necessities like for each carrier? Like can UHC, and I know, first off, let's back up. You said prescriptions are grandfathered in. One, I think, was 1 year and the other was 180 days, correct?
Correct.
I guess more concerning for the 180-day one, because if it's 1 year, they could move into, okay. Is it possible that they have different authorization processes for different drugs, like this carrier, my drug's authorized, but on this one it wasn't? Is that a possibility?
With it being grandfathered,
After the grandfather.
After the grandfather, it is possible. It depends on the drug itself. It depends on whether or not it's specialty, all the different tiers that are built in terms of brand specialty, and what might be associated with the type of drug and what it's trying to treat. For example, right now we're seeing a big move with GLP-1,
Right.
where they're implementing new criteria of having comorbidities and a BMI of over 40 in order to get it. Whereas before, last year and the year before, it was pretty much a free-for-all in terms of that. So you could see that happening. I would say in general.
Because by the 180 days, it would be too late to retroactively change if their prescriptions are affected. Would they know before that?
They would, I believe they would if they're filling the prescriptions prior to that. And then also keep in mind with Blue Shield's formulary, they actually have the ability to potentially have savings given their pharmacy care reimagined initiatives. So we did see for them with the 180 days that there was actually a benefit in terms of the tiering and the different drugs that are currently being utilized versus what their actual formula is. And Gordon, you want to speak to that at all?
I think that's, I mean, for me.
The other comment will be that formularies are subject to change. They could change quarterly.
Okay.
And again, it's a moving dynamic, was addressed a moment ago, so it's any moment in time, I think you can look at it and going, okay, what drug am I on? And is it on this formulary? That's probably for me would be an indicator. It's probably an area that I would want to align with first. And then as it evolves over time, it's going to change. But it's because new drugs come into the mix or they're negotiating better arrangements for equally effective medications. So there's gonna be a swap, so it could be a change in the drug, but if there's no negative impact to the member's health by doing it, then that becomes a win-win, and that's kind of the idea of managing that prescription formulary over time.
Anybody who is newly prescribed a drug would obviously go through that process, whatever that might be under the carrier at the time in which they're prescribed those medications.
If there's no other questions so far, could we talk really quick on overall migration costs? And then we can go into the other parts of the report on the staff side.
So in terms of financials, we were negotiating 2026 rates, but beyond that, there was also some additional multi-year rate guarantees that were provided as part of this process.
I'm sorry, can you tell us what page we're on?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 19 of the report.
42 of the PDF.
So in terms of the costs themselves, given that we could see some mapping and migration, that's going to determine the ultimate cost of the package relative to what the actual enrollment is going to be. From our best and final process, we did see savings for package one in a variety of different migration scenarios. Beyond that, we took it a step further and we modeled out the rate caps that were provided by the carriers to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. That is on page 20. And then we also gave you a chart that kind of details out what those multi-year rate guarantees are. In terms of Kaiser, they did provide some rate guarantees that they did require an impact to rates. So we did not include that at this point in time because we didn't want to raise the cost there in the modeling. And then we took the rate that was without those rate guarantees, but the Blue Shield plans and the UHC plans were modeled out with their the multi-year rate guarantees as stated. One thing I will note is United Healthcare provided the opportunity to have an additional lower multi-year rate guarantee if the age sex factor of the city were to reduce or change down to less than 1.22 for the Harmony plan and less than 1.05 for the signature value plan. It's currently at 1.25 for Harmony and 1.11 for signature value. We did not want to depend on the fact that the mix could change that much and bank on those lower rate guarantees, but they are available should the city actually achieve those. The cost would be even less than what is stated here. So there is an opportunity there as well.
Can you remind me what ASF stands for?
Age sex factor.
He's essentially saying that if more healthy people that aren't going to use services get onto that plan, then it's going to be cheaper.
And depending on
I think you understand it very well.
Absolutely, yes. And depending on what we see in migration, there's a possibility it could be attained, but we didn't want to guarantee that or include that yet in the financials at this point. So there is that opportunity. There's also optional rate guarantees that were provided for year 3. But the contract right now is for 2 years. So we have those as part of our back pocket for a later point in time.
For both of them?
Yes.
So if there's no other questions on cost or anything else, what Keenan and Siegel have presented so far, we are going to pivot back to the report. So everything we talked about in this past hour or something, is recommendation B. We still have recommendation C, D, and F. So for recommendation C, that is starting on page 17, I think is the easier start place. The past decade and some change has shown that the full network that is offered is capped by subsidy on the cost of the narrow network. And that is a result of something that happened in 2012. The city had gone through the horrible budget crisis that we had back then, and there was a direction to this committee to save $12 million from benefits. That's also when we started, or when the city started, not this group, when the city started the 5% that turned into 10% cost share, and a whole bunch of other things. And so in trying to save money for the city, the JLMBC at that time had made a decision to adopt plans that had a lower network and were going to have disruption, and employees got very upset. And there was a revision that happened the intention was to have only 3 plans at that time. But to not impact those employees that were losing access to services through that disruption, the JLMBC agreed to continue with a 4th plan at the cost of the included plan. That was a one-time action intended for 2013 and has continued to date. So the authority of that was written to the ad code, and that is the ad code section that's referenced in the document. That ad code section got copied in a couple MOUs, just 3. MOU 2, 9, and 13 still have that language. The JLMBC has, through the 12 years since then, reconfirmed that action through adopting the program each year. But the model has not changed, and pretty much for the most part, the carriers didn't change. So we've had kind of the same situation, the same time for the most part for this entire time. So the argument that's laid out here and really starts on page 19, and you can see on page 18, the original ordinance that was prompted by the JLMBC, it was very specific to the 2013 plan year. Then in 2014, that language got codified more generically, which is at the top of 2019, but otherwise at the top of page 19, but is otherwise unchanged. So the argument laid out in the following bullet points on page 19 outline all the reasons why we think that this language should not apply to this 3-carrier model. In summary, they identify that action was really intended as a one-time action and the JLMBC had no intention of continuing that 4th plan, but yet it still remained, and to this day is still here. So that action was not successful on getting rid of that plan. And therefore the action is not successful, or is no longer successful. This is a 3-carrier model that the city has not had before. That action was done on a 2-carrier model, and by applying it to a 3-carrier model, disadvantages one provider over another substantially, and creates imparity between the 3 carriers that are on here to an unfair degree. The next bullet point identifies that the intention back when JLMBC made that in 2012 was because those networks were very similar. Right now, there is a small level of discrepancy or a small level of difference between the Harmony and Signature Value networks. And it would only apply to the Harmony and Signature Value networks. So that's the only carrier we have that has 2 HMOs, and that language is very specifically identified to HMO. And then the next one identifies that the overall concept itself of the language just generically refers to a plan name. It doesn't define a plan name. Through this proposal, the networks or the providers were identified to look at plan replacement. UHC actually identified their signature value as a replacement for both the full network and the regional network. So it is a broader network. We would be mapping people as we discuss a lot. It's not a plan replacement. So that's another reason why this doesn't apply or is not identified to apply. And then the last one that's on there is overall the effort back then was a cost savings, a cost balance savings. And I think we've hopefully demonstrated enough in this report, in this recommendation, that the cost balance savings exists as recommended with the full subsidy applied. If the full subsidy was not applied, the employees that go to the Signature Value Network would pay a lot more out of pocket. So the recommendation is for this committee to agree with these findings, to say that this ad code section does not apply to this three carrier model. Then we would be at the position of saying, what do we do with the language? The committee can, and that's identified on page 21. There's two clear options. Option one is the committee say, yep, that language doesn't apply anymore. Let's recommend to have it completely taken away, to have that code section, that paragraph, just be removed from the ad code, withdrawn. The other option is to refer this concept back over to the ad hoc subcommittee on governance, and for them to look at revisions in concurrence with the other tasks that they are looking at in ad code revision changes, which is the healthcare subsidy maximum. It may be more prudent for option one to remove any understanding or any conflict that an employee might have or anything else, in us moving forward in implementing these plan changes immediately. So that language doesn't exist when January 1st comes around. The ad hoc under that scenario, the ad hoc subcommittee is still tasked with creating a proposal this committee is going to love and enjoy that addresses subsidy across the board. So another way to look at this, and what I'm trying to say too, the concept of this full narrow complicates the subsidy, right? It creates inequity or differences between how subsidy is applied, and the ad hoc committee is trying to do the opposite, create uniform subsidy application.
So option one is contained in option two, and not the reverse.
I agree with that.
Right, okay. So option one solves the immediate problem, and we still have to come back and address anything unaddressed through the option two scope.
Correct.
But option two could result in option one right away.
Correct.
Fairly soon.
Depending on how quickly the subcommittee activates.
So that makes sense.
Have we constituted this subcommittee? I only heard.
We're pretty close. We're just confirming. We should have one very soonly confirmed.
Have representatives been selected?
I think wasn't there something circulating and people volunteered, right?
Correct. And Chung, could you speak on whether or not, without naming names necessarily, if we are at the final stage of confirming the subcommittee membership?
Yes, we have one member from management and one member from labor who have volunteered. I am going to be sending out a confirmation email shortly, and then we'll be we'll start trying to schedule an ad hoc committee meeting date to discuss the provision changes.
You're telling me, like, I wrote back to Chung and I said, pretend there's a line of management, right? And pretend that all four step backwards. I would be the one that's left standing forward. Did that happen? That's all I want to know.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So if we
We're
can.
trying to protect the names of the guilty and
Yeah, I just want to know why the.
Select option one, we wouldn't need many. Do I have that wrong?
For this particular item, there wouldn't be a requirement for committee. The committee can still discuss it, but correct, right? In option one, and just to fully clarify too, if the committee wants to go with option one, then a recommendation D would need to be revised to explicitly say that.
And that's just on the agenda, but
Correct.
Okay.
There's two more items of this report if the committee is ready to cover them. So the recommendation E is a result of conversation from the last meeting. It is recommended, but is also optional. The objective of today's meeting is to come to a final acceptance of rates, and so that we can move forward with open enrollment without any further delay or risk. It is understood that there may be a desire for this committee to talk directly with providers. We have not provided that option today. You can still talk with providers. It is up to you to direct if you want to. We can bring the providers to the table at a second meeting, which would be August, for them to explain whatever you want them. You can ask them any questions you want. They can provide a presentation. That is your directive or your decision. And so that is the very small paragraph on page 22 in recommendation E. The last item of this report speaks to our overall plan changes. We did discuss Kaiser had a lot of terms, and there is some terms in there that would complicate plan changes that this committee still has not yet made. That includes the freezing of enrollment, as well as some potential other changes that the committee has not decided yet. At this point in time, it is unlikely that we would make a decision on plan changes that could affect for 2026, right? We've already kind of moved past the middle a little bit, but those changes have not. They're still on the table. We still need to discuss them again. So but I think now the concept is that we need to discuss them in a new light of what it means with these new providers or the new proposals on the table. So the last recommendation is to direct staff to bring back the items that had not been adopted from that plan change discussion that we had in May. It seemed like a lot longer ago, but it's just May. And for us to restart discussion on what to do or how to forward those recommendations or plan changes. That is freezing the plan, having some sort of active enrollment at some point. Those are the two big ones, but that would be for a future year. That wraps up the staff report.
So bringing back just to actually clarify, so on page 23 of the report, sub items C and F. Those are the items that you're saying, recommending to instruct staff to bring back at a future time to talk about for a future year.
Correct. So yeah, seeing that from the prior report, committee report, I listed it there somewhere, but from that prior report, those are the two items that we that left undid. That was report 25 also, correct?
Sub item C and sub item F, under sub item B.
Yeah, yes, I know. I need to change the numbering.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, seeing after from a prior report, not the one. Yeah,
Correct.
I think I just have two overall points. I think that, you know, we have just for a broad context. Yeah, regarding the approach to disruption for this RFP process, which was a departure from a little bit of a departure from how we looked at it previously, and certainly different from how it's been applied previously. So disruption is a thing that happens constantly, right? Providers leave, they retire, they pass away. We saw during the pandemic, a lot of providers left healthcare entirely. So there was a lot of change there. Formularies change routinely, constantly throughout the year. So, you know, access to certain prescriptions changes regarding legislation, changes the access to different prescriptions. And so disruption is kind of, in a sense, is just sort of the water that we swim in. And so I think it's been a really good process looking at how to approach it differently so that we're managing it better rather than just kind of standing in the river and trying to stop it with our hands, and just sort of trying to flow with it and manage it for the members so that they have the best overall outcome. So I think that's been a really good process, and I think where you landed is really going to be effective. Obviously, we'll keep updates and keep an eye on it, and you know, as far as we'll talk about this in the communications piece of it, but you know, from my perspective, as labor, we would like to be involved in the benefits fairs as much as possible to kind of help out with that, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. So that's one piece of it, is that I think we've landed at a really good spot as far as managing the disruption and focusing on the provider aspect rather than trying to do some weird like plan to plan thing. The other piece is talking about the open enrollment and the education piece. You know, this is going to require a lot of communication with members. I think that's a positive thing.
Because as we remember back, and I'm gonna reach back now, a while ago, and remind everybody, we did a survey. Lo these many months ago, we did a survey that showed that members currently overall don't really understand how their plan works. That was a big takeaway from that survey for me that I took away from it, is that a lot of members do not currently understand how their plan works. So I think this communication piece that's necessary is also a really good opportunity to help the members understand their current plan, to understand how it works. Because the basic function of how the plan works is still the same. So this is, I think, really a huge silver lining for me is that it's an opportunity to get out there and explain to our members how the plans work and, create that kind of model for education that, maybe we can kind of continue forward and that that education piece just becomes part of how we do business. So I think those are really positive outcomes of this process. So, yeah. My 2 cents. Do you have any other questions or comments?
I have a question, one more question that I didn't ask, and I apologize, and I do have a comment as well. In our prior utilization reports, we saw how behavioral health as one of the top uses, but it's not really mentioned in this report much. I think I saw it once, the word disruption for behavioral health providers. Did we look at that?
It's included within the summary of the disruption results. We didn't drill down specifically on that within what's enclosed here, but it is factored.
In regards to the facility closures, is there any specific areas that we're concerned about as being far away from a hospital that we should know about?
I wouldn't say that there's any specific areas that we should be concerned about. I know our look at facilities and hospitals was at a higher level of a higher standard. So that is one area that we held the carriers to a higher level on. But I'm not aware of anything that we should be concerned about in terms of closures. This whole time.
I guess before we vote, I do want to thank everybody for all the hard work. I know it was hard work. I'm not trying to create, situations where you've done all this work and it seems like we don't appreciate it because I know, I'm pro-employee, so I feel for you and I know. So I do want to thank you for that. I don't know how this vote is gonna go, but I do also want to say, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm gonna say it anyway, to Anthem because they have served my members and they have served them well. I don't have complaints. I've heard good things. So I do want to thank them thank Anthem on the behalf of my members for the time that we have spent together. If this vote, depending on this vote goes, I don't know if I'll have another opportunity. That's all.
Can I just ask one final question, if I could? During public comment, there's a reference to an inaccuracy in a report related to disruption. Would the community care to comment or provide any kind of insight as to what that might be a reference to? If there's just seeing it differently or whatever to help us, as somebody who's primarily concerned about that, that'd be helpful.
That's a reference to the top 25 listings that are within the report, which look at individual provider locations versus summarizing by medical group as a whole. It's a complementary exhibit that just shows where the most foot traffic is and what the PAR status is within the proposed networks. When we develop migration assumptions and cost projections, we are rolling it up by medical group in summary format, utilizing data that Anthem provided us based on member elections within specific medical groups. So it's a complementary exhibit, but for the purposes of cost projections and where we're mapping people and things like that, we're going based off of a report that Anthem provided that had medical group assignments.
And this was the chart that had the example that was given, started off at 400.
Yeah, it had to do with utilization specifically versus enrolled assigned PCPs. That exhibit was drilling down into those who are actually going to specific locations versus being assigned to specific locations.
And so what you provided us was the actual usage as opposed to
like very specific places. So for example, there's you'll see Optums on that report twice because there's 2 different Optum locations in South Bay, one in Gardena and one in what the other location. There's 2 locations. So it's literally down to an address on that report that is most frequented by the members in your plan versus what we utilize on a broader spectrum to develop migration and cost projections, which is summary by medical.
And an actual enrollment.
So people who are actually going to the doctor, what you're saying.
Correct, that's what the chart was showing. Those are actually utilizing. Hopefully that helps.
It did, thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
I'd just like to echo Marlene's thanks to Keenan and Siegel and the personnel department and Shauna and Mr. Griffin who's in the audience for participating in the RFP process. And it was a lot of work, and we appreciate your careful consideration.
Thank you.
Anything else then? Let's go ahead and.
I'm prepared to move maybe C, D, E, and F, but on D, I prefer option 1.
Second.
So on D, it would be option 1, not the 1. Right.
Noted. If we're in agreement for a vote, then Chung, do you want to go ahead and do roll call?
Hold on a second on the question, if I might.
Sure.
I have a reservation about F, and this is basically directing the staff to go back and revisit the two things that I thought were pretty controversial. One was moving to an active enrollment system, where in the city, 90% of employees, our members, don't actively do that. And under the proposal, if I remember right, they'd be defaulted into the cheapest plan available.
That part we did take action on to say no.
Okay.
So the
Revisiting that is concerning to me, given our prior, unless I'm misunderstanding our prior action.
they were it was confusing and they were technically separate. So the two pieces were to default somebody as a separate action from the actual active enrollment concept. The default part did not pass. That is not being recommended necessarily to be brought back. But if it's preferred by the committee to revise and make that more clear on F, you can make that amending motion, I believe.
Yes.
That would be great. I'd like to see that.
So we have recommendations for A, B, sorry, regarding item number 3. We have a recommendation to adopt A, B, C, D with amendment for E, for option 1 for the record, option 1 being.
Option 1 is, as written in the report, that the committee recommends to strike the language in the ad code completely.
Right.
Option D, Mr. City Attorney.
Yeah, and then amend subparagraph F with.
No,
that was.
I know, but I'm the maker of the motion. So what I would agree to is, I would agree to do A, B, C, D, and E with D being changed and remove F off it so that we can then consider what Mr. Roger wants to say.
Perfect.
Second.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on A, B, C, D, and E. We'll then address Chad's thing, D with the option 1 instead of the voter committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then if it seems like this is the motion on the table, Chung, you want to go ahead and take the roll?
Wait, are we voting on all at once?
All except for F.
All except for F.
And D is option 1, strike the language not voted by committee.
Oh, well, I don't have to have a subcommittee.
Oh, you understand?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's a purpose.
Is there
And then,
then
including E to do presentations in front.
correct.
Yes.
So
Yeah, including E.
Okay.
The only thing we're separating out on this is F.
Excellent.
and just to clarify on any, there would be subsequent requests, so you guys can tell us you want to think separately. So if that is still the stance, seems like it is. So Chung, if you'd like to go ahead and do a roll call.
Okay, we will now begin the roll call vote, starting first with the employee organization, then management. Shauna, your vote.
Aye.
Marlene, your vote.
I'll vote aye with some concerns that remain from item A.
I'm sorry, Marlene, can you please repeat that?
My vote is aye, but I do want to make for the record that I do still have some concerns. I hope everything works out, but there's still concerns for me with A and disruption. I will vote aye on the entire package.
Thank you, Marlene. Tad, your vote.
Aye.
Esteban, your vote.
Yes.
Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Tyrone, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Teddy, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
So Chad, the only thing is, what do we want to do with that? We want to make sure something is up front.
Well, I want to understand the
We've already voted, so if you want to remake a reconsideration, you have to.
We didn't vote on that.
We didn't vote
Yeah,
again.
sorry. My apologies.
Okay. So just clarify, so I did understand it, but I think I did.
Well, under the proposal, I was voicing a concern about one of the items that we'd be revisiting. Specifically, it was
The default.
related to, active enrollment instead of passive, which
Right.
90% of the city employees do
Yeah,
not
I
do
got
that,
that,
right?
right.
That'd be very disruptive. And two, the second part of it, which is having a cap on who can enroll in what
Right.
plans based on
I remember
enrollment.
that.
And both those things that, I guess we can agree to talk about them in a future time, but I think they're very controversial, and I'm happy to see them segregated out of the previous action we took together. So,
And then Paul, you had a response about whether or not that was actually part of what's identified here, right?
Well, just a clarification. So on, in, committee report 25-24, there is, and it is attached at the end. The concept of active enrollment versus default was separated. And I know they overlap and they kind of connected to each other, but they were technically separated. So we're not proposing to bring back the concept of default again.
Okay.
Just the concept of active enrollment and whatever that means. So if there is, any way you want to do it.
so is the recommendation that we'll reconsider this at a future date?
Correct. The recommendation, just to discuss.
So I could definitely impose it in the future, right? Yeah, then.
What I was most concerned about is they were just gonna bring us an update on those things, which means we're not directing them to bring us a decision on them, just an update.
Correct.
But I agree with you. I don't think we need to readdress the long drawn out discussion about default.
All right, so in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and approve the explanation, the staff's motion, recommendation regarding item F.
Second.
Right, it sounds like we're ready for a vote. Go ahead, John.
Okay, we will be taking a vote, same format again. Donna, your vote. I'm sorry, can you please repeat that, Shauna?
Aye.
Thank you. Marlene, your vote.
Aye.
Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Esteban, your vote.
Yeah.
Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Tyrone, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Teddy, your vote.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. All right. I was gonna do like a quick stretch. Before we. All right, item number 4. Committee report 2532, 2026 LE plan adoption.
I want to do a quick introduction, but Chung is going to lead this off. Keenan does have an attachment here, so we're going to get the results of the table. Chung is going to start the conversation, and we will go from there. Go ahead, Chung.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, this report is for the LEL program 2026 service provider selection, renewal, plan design changes, and plan adoption. prior to the open enrollment of each year, staff brings forth a report to the JLMBC for the service provider selection, renewal, plan design changes, and plan adoption for the upcoming benefit year. For the 2026 benefit year, staff is recommending that the JLMBC take the following actions. A, approve the listed service providers for the medical, dental, vision, life, disability, flexible spending accounts, and employee assistance program providers for 2026. B, approve the adoption of a high deductible health plan health savings account, and the changes to the annual maximum contribution for the healthcare flexible spending account and dependent care reimbursement account. C, approve the projected LAWell program expenditure. And D, request that the personnel department transmit a report to City Council recommending the adoption of the 2026 LAWell program. Quite a bit of this information was covered on the prior report, so I'm just going to be going over some of the sections really briefly. On pages 3 and 4 is an overview of the provider and rate changes for the 2025 and 2026 years as comparison. And within this, there is also various medical plan changes, as well as some increases and decreases to some of the benefits within the LAWell program. The disability premium rate is going to be decreasing for 2026, as well as the, while the EAP rate has a small increase. For the remaining benefits, the rates remain unchanged for 2026. If we scroll down over onto page 4 through page 11 is our, those pages contain more in-depth information on the proposed medical plan changes, including the rate changes that are going to be occurring. And then on pages 11 through 17 are more information on the proposed high deductible health plan HSA. This would be a new benefit offering to go with the high deductible health plan PPO plan, which requires that an HSA be offered alongside the plan. And then now I'm going to turn it over to Keenan and Siegel.
We've actually a deck that summarizes some of the program changes for 2026. I say changes loosely because a lot of the plan designs and rates are remaining the same due to rate guarantee periods that were secured in prior RFPs and negotiations. In terms of the medical plans, we went over that quite extensively. We did include the rates here for the proposed package 1 on page 8 of our deck. So don't want to spend a lot of time there because we've spent a lot of time on those in particular already. But in terms of dental and vision, those are both in rate guarantee periods, no proposed benefit plan changes or carrier changes there. Life and AD&D provided by MetLife in a rate guarantee period, no changes to rates for 2026. Disability plans through the standard were up for renewal, and they did come in at an overall decrease of about 12.5% in total. So that was good news on that front. The Optum EFAP program had a 2.5% escalator as part of the contract that was approved by the JLMBC. That will be triggered effective January 1st of 2026, and the tax advantage savings accounts through AmeriFlex also in a rate guarantee with no changes to rates. Follow on to that summary, we go into the details of the programs themselves and provide the actual rates throughout on slides 10, starting slides 10, 11, and into slides 12, and give you kind of an overview of the renewal or standard on pages 13 and 14. Recommendations are that those get approved and adopted. I did want to just also make one note that there is some legislation that might provide an enhancement for the dependent care assistance program. That amount, which has been set at $5,000 annually for many years, will now potentially be able to change that to up to $7,500. How our medical FSA limits are still to be determined at this point in time. There's also, obviously the HSA option now and, limited purpose FSA, which is the compliance aspect of that, that can be considered as well. So that is a very high level summary. Happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
None.
I'm sorry, question. Is the overall cost to the city, the changes to the premiums that are covered by the city's portion? What is that number? And how does the city plan to absorb that, which I don't.
I think I can take that. So if we go back to page 18 of the report, so 18 shows the actual budget portion of the human resources budget that was adopted. This is proposed, but it was adopted unchanged for 25-26. So this is there was an increase of $29 million provided in the budget to cover expenses for 25-26. Now that is split between what's currently happening right now, because when the last budget cycle had gone through, kind of undercut what the projection was going to be, as well as the change for next year. For the first 6 months in 2026, that is covered under this particular dollar amount. When we had done budget projections, the proposed increase for this overall was considered around 6%. What we are currently showing for the changes that for medical, granted, employee choice is going to make a big change. It's going to make a difference, which you can't predict. But right now we are within that ballpark. In the proposed, there is no need at this point to say that $29 million that was added to the budget for 25-26 needs to change even 1 penny. The recommendation, though, is that, especially since we want this committee to be a little bit more on top of finances and be more involved in understanding of how this budget process works, is that after open enrollment is done and we see where migration goes, what people will actually want to move into, plans for their voluntary election and everything else, when we see, then we're going to relook at what this figure is. And make any adjustment if needed through the mid-year FSR, the mid-year financial status report.
Do you have a dollar amount on worst case scenario?
So there is no, not necessarily worst case scenario, because worst case scenario, I guess if everybody goes to the most expensive probably option, I don't think we've priced that out yet. But ballpark. That's a good question. I think we'd have to get back to you on that one. If everybody made a dramatic shift over to the PPO or something like that, we didn't factor that in. The anticipated number is in the prior report, and so the deviation of migration change was about like $5 million difference anticipated.
$6 million savings it was still, right?
Correct, right? So we're correct. That's the way we're looking at it, correct. That's separate from this projection, but correct. Budget is still just the first 6 months. So, if there are, Tom, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I was like, no. Any other questions from anybody?
I have one. I don't care what it sounds like. I want to understand it. Where did the high deductible health plan, like who's the provider? I'm not following. I'm sorry.
That Blue Shield. So
Okay,
when we went out to bid under the medical RFP, we asked for a whole bunch of different options. We asked for the high deductible health plan. We asked for an EPO. We asked for something else that I can't think of right now. And so the Blue Shield being selected as the provider for the high deductible health plan makes the education piece really simple.
Okay.
Because employees don't have to worry about whether their doctor is in network or out of network between the two different plan, the PPO types. All they have to focus on is that deductible difference.
Thank you.
If there are, so the comment, the regular process of this report in attachment C, wherever that is a draft of the council version that's going to move forward. So if the committee adopts the plan menu as proposed in this report, then That draft will be finalized, signed by the chair and the vice chair, submitted to council for final adoption.
So if on this one, I would move approval, do I just move approval of report 25, or do I have to do the ABC?
It would need to be everything. Well, unless you want to do it one by one.
I mean, but I don't think we can park it out, so I would move approval of committee report 2532 and recommendation A, B, C, and D.
Second.
There's just no other questions or comments? And then do the
We're ready for a vote. Go ahead.
We will now begin the vote. Donna, your vote.
Aye.
Marlene, your vote.
Aye.
Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Esteban, your vote.
Yeah.
Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Tyrone, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Teddy, your vote.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, committee report 2533, the staff support for home stretch.
I believe Tony is going to kick us off on this one.
Okay, for this report, staff is recommending that the JLMBC approve the use of Siegel and Keenan staff to help supplement city staffing during the open enrollment period. As mentioned before, and on the other prior report, the plan design changes that are being proposed for the 2026 benefit year are really significant and requires some substantial changes to the communication as well as the implementation plan and so to address this increased workload, we have brought in some staff from other sections within employee benefits, but we would also like to be able to utilize Siegel and Keenan staff due to their expertise and knowledge of the LOL program and benefits to help supplement city staff and to provide support for the expanded communication plan and the implementation plan for the LOL program. Does anyone have any questions about this report?
Is this a new contract? Are we budgeting for it or what? How?
So this would be under the existing contracts. Under each contract, there is a hourly scope of work order line item or action to which we can use consulting services. So this would be, or the proposal that Sean's putting forward is that we would use Keenan and Siegel to physically staff or supplement our staff at each of the in-person events that we're going to talk about, as well as in other areas during open enrollment, including in our office, to be able to educate, talk to people directly. We do have a couple of vacancies right now, which we're still working through the city transfer situation that is happening. And so those positions, when they are filled, would not be up to speed to be able to partake in open enrollment in its fullest. This is a humongous effort that we are doing, and so we want to make sure we have a lot of resources.
Is there a not to exceed?
Yeah, that was my question. Do you have a budget? There's not a number associated even generally.
So we could set one. This is to essentially kind of a feedback asking how you want to approach this from a financial standpoint. There is a contract limit on each contract. We are well below that limit, but that limit is over the 3-year span. It's set at a very high bar for all the services included. So we could approach this. We could also we could delay this action if there is direction from the committee to come back with something more concrete. But the committee could identify a set limit. If you want to set a certain number of hours, if you want to set a certain dollar amount, we could do that with strength. This is more open-ended.
When would this, so you would utilize these resources starting when? I'm trying to think, do we have time to bring it back?
Really, I think boots on the ground need to be September, so that we have our plan of action and identified when we do it on each side. So there is time to bring something back at the August meeting, which is in 3 weeks.
Is that enough time for you guys to come up with the?
I think we need to, well, I think we need some sort of parameters of what you guys want to see. Do you want to see an hours cap? Do you want to see a dollar cap? Do you want to see more of like an actual scope of level of work, or like what kind of direction do you want to give us?
If there's a current contract and you think everything's gonna fall within the current contract, then we don't have a problem, we don't have to do anything. I was concerned that we would like use up 3 years worth in one, and then what are we gonna do? And do we have to do a whole
I think
RFP?
it's the first example you described. There's surplus budget just because of the activities that occurred over the last 3 years. So the idea would be to use that, which has already been approved, and use it as needed, but not to exceed.
Are these your current staff, current people on staff? And then
Might be looking at one of
Steve.
Yeah, there you go. So we just kind of pay you an hourly rate outside of, is that how it works?
It's already, we already have to establish our hourly rate.
There's an hourly rate in the contract that talks about work that's in addition to what they contracted for. That's what they're talking about.
But I think, well, you mapped out a 3-year
Okay,
budget, and I think we're well within that.
and it would be what, for a couple months, 3 months, or what?
Just the two, and just to clarify, right, like the point of this is that we use Keenan and Siegel on a regular basis, right? They're always working with us. We are saying that we are going to be tripling essentially the level of work that we've been having them do. There's nothing out of scope from the contract that we're saying. We're not asking to limit the contract services at all. All we're saying is we're gonna use more money than what we have been using. And technically, even though it's not
We're to
explicitly.
get more bodies for the money, right?
Yeah.
Okay, not just more hours out of Steve.
Not just Steve.
So basically, no more Steve. I get it.
Is there other Steves that we could?
When we underutilize the contract, you'll come to us for that, and it's within the parameters that have already been adopted.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the issue is if you expect to exceed the amount of money you have in your budget, then we need to have a discussion.
I just, why do we even need that? I mean, if it's within the
Can we
contract.
let
what's-
Chad?
You don't.
Can we let Chad ask a question? You gotta do that.
So I'd like to make a motion, we approve
Oh, I didn't know that.
the staff's recommendation for report 533. We're not committed at this point.
Okay,
We
no,
decided to do this.
sorry,
They helped me carry on.
I thought you guys just kept
Yeah.
passing
No,
by.
it's just,
I mean, the two of you sit right next to him too.
It wasn't intent.
There's a motion and a second to approve.
Do we have any other questions
25
or
hours.
comments before we? Okay,
Chung, final vote?
Okay, thank you all. We will now begin the vote for this report. John, your vote?
Aye.
Marlene, your vote?
Aye.
Chad, your vote?
aye.
Esteban, your vote?
Yes.
Lisa, your vote?
Aye.
Tyrone, your vote?
Aye.
Tony, your vote?
Aye.
Paul, your vote?
Aye.
Kenny, your vote? Sorry if I didn't hear it, but Petty, your vote? Thank you. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to number 6 here, committee report 2534 on the open enrollment.
So this should be somewhat quick. This is just an overall outline of what we are planning to do for open enrollment communications. The objective would be that we are going to bring back a much more detailed, comprehensive communication plan at the August meeting along with draft communication items. But this is on page, starting on 1 and then finishing on 2 is a month-by-month kind of plan between our citywide and targeted communications. And then we are planning a massively large in-person event schedule with right now 11 on-site activities with more to come. The definite preferred method would be for us to have employees come to this on-site, get all their questions answered, enroll at the same time. It is preferred experience, but we know not everybody can go on-site. So we are also going to have virtual webinars and a lot of other virtual options. We're trying to do as much as possible. Love to feel any feedback. In addition to the feedback that you gave last time, I also wanted to say really quickly. So the loss of Ted is still hard for us. We're still grieving with it.
Yep.
He was our communications person. And so we're trying to pick up the pieces after him. Daniel is stepping in. He is going to be taking the lead in communications moving forward. Ted left a great organization, a great amount of stuff. And so we're able to pick up kind of a little bit where he left off. But Daniel is going to be moving forward. And you'll be hearing from him a lot more from now on.
So for this piece, for the offsite events. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for our side, we would want to be present. 721 is interested in being present as much as possible to help out at these benefits fairs, or that, however you're calling them. I don't know, do the other labor organizations have interest in also doing that? Because I know
Well, I mean, if
how to
you want,
coordinate that and
would like to be notified, but maybe to be there is a day-to-day, hour by hour thing for me, so.
I don't know if we do like a round robin schedule or if there's like a, I don't know. I know, there's like, you know, and we have different, you know, segments of populations at different locations and you know, so. Yeah, it's something that I've, you know, talked internally a little bit about, so.
I think we'd be very open to anyone coming to visit, being on site and help the staff there. So we can make it an open invite. But I think even more so, what might be helpful is you know, hearing from the right messengers matters. So when we get our communications ready, I think there would be a very helpful role with the labor partners to take on communications, disseminate it through your own channels to make sure that we just reach as far as we can. That would be, it might sound small, but it's actually really significant.
Oh, no, that's a big part of what we do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let us know. I don't know how helpful we could be. I could be. I obviously am not gonna give advice on where people should elect, but we come just to have a presence. I don't know if you're offering a booth or if you're just saying, just come and help us set up right down. What is the?
I think booths will be in short supply,
Okay.
which is great because we have so many carriers, and providers. But I think come, you know, see and get some swag, actually bring swag.
I'm just curious, I apologize for my ignorance, but does city staff prepare all of the communications related to open enrollment internally?
We have been. We have been using consulting resources over the years to help with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And a couple years ago, we transitioned, and actually last year for sure, Ted did everything backwards and forwards. We still have consultants do compliance. We are looking to continue that this year. But we still do have communication contracts where if we need to, we can get support.
You're also given money by the carriers, right? The new carriers? That they provide.
Yes, there is some.
Yep. There's lots of money for implementation, programming, communications. That should help.
For I'll put back to the offset, the hours are TBD, but is the intent for it to be a couple of hours, or is the intent to be like an all day thing, or?
Tentatively, likely 11 to 2, so everyone with 2 hours. You know, in the past, there's been interest in, you know, what can we do to cover hours outside that kind of peak point. And it's based on our experience, the best way to accommodate that is by having really good virtual options. So having special appointments with our staff for open enrollment at a number of hours that But yeah, generally 11 to 2, so people come during lunch.
Yeah.
And usually like to set up for an hour and get off an hour out.
Thank you. Any more, did you finish?
Yeah,
Okay, do we have any more questions or comments on this one? Okay, it's just informational, so. Good. All right, thank you so much, that was a lot. Do we have a request for any future agenda items from anybody? Okay, so our next meeting is August 7th. And then it'll be September 4th and October 2nd. And 3/18. Good job. Hey.
Donna.
The camera, oh my God.